Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tim. This is Michelle. We are on the Visualforce Scrum team. Yes, thank you. And we're super excited to talk about Visualforce and to demonstrate some of the more basic but super cool features that the platform provides. Before we get started, some housekeeping. If you haven't seen this slide yet, here it is, and you'll see it many more times this week. It basically says if you're making purchasing decisions, please make those decisions based on products and offerings that are currently available. Okay, what is Visualforce? So a question, but before I answer the question, I want to ask you all a question. How many of you have ever written a Visualforce page? All right, now how many have written a Visualforce page with some custom Apex code, whether it's a custom controller or a controller extension? Okay, we got one. All right. So those of you that have used Visualforce know what it basically is. And if you read the Visualforce Developer Guide, and we recommend that everybody read the Visualforce Developer Guide, there is a lengthy and eloquent definition of what Visualforce is. But in a nutshell, it's a markup language similar to JSP, and it's what our customers use to create custom pages. It is the V in MVC. So as a refresher, MVC stands for Model View Controller. It is a widely accepted technique in the web development community that calls for a separation of duties between the model, in our case that's our standard or custom objects, the view, which is Visualforce, the markup, and the controller, which in our case is Apex. It's the code that handles the operations and interactions between the view and the model. Visualforce is part of the Force.com platform. So I was once told that Force.com platform is MVC in the cloud at Salesforce, and I love that explanation of Force.com. It's basically Visualforce, Apex, your standard or custom objects, and also something called static resources. It's comprised of a built-in tag library. The namespace for these tags is Apex. So you'll see, for example, Apex:page is the page element. It is the topmost element in every page. In fact, you can't save a page if you don't start your page with Apex page. There are many other elements provided can be bound to controllers, controller entities like methods for handling actions, and controller properties for rendering variables. When you write a page, you're going to choose a controller. I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to do anything dynamic, you will want to choose a controller. You can choose a standard controller, which is provided by the platform. So if you want to write a page that deals with your account objects, you use the account standard controller, and you get the standard operations like create, update, delete provided for you. You don't have to write that code. If you want to use, a lot of times people ask me, when do I use standard controller? When do I use a custom controller? And the answer typically is, if you're using a single object type or record type and a single object, and you're going to do basic operations like create, update, delete, then you want to use a standard controller. If you're going to do something much more custom, you're going to use multiple record types, lots of objects, lists of objects, and objects that are going to communicate with one another, you're probably going to want to write a custom controller. There is a middle ground. If you want the added benefit of the standard controller and those provided operations, but you also want to have your own custom operations, you can provide an extension. So you can have a standard controller with a controller extension. So that's what we're going to do in the demo today. Both standard and custom controllers can be extended. All right, what can you do with Visualforce? You can do a whole bunch of stuff with Visualforce. A lot of times people ask me when they're talking about their layouts and their pages, they want to know if they can do something custom on a page. Like if someone checks a box, can I have a label change color or something along those lines? And the answer with standard layouts is typically no, you can't do that. But if you're willing to implement some Visualforce, then the answer is yes. And the answer to lots of customization questions is yes, if you are willing to do some Visualforce. So Visualforce, like I said, it's markup. It's XML. And the namespace of all the built-in elements is Apex. You can, however, mix in HTML elements. So you can have div tags, you can have H1 tags, you can have embedded video, you can do any HTML5 elements you want inside the Visualforce page. Every page, like I said, has to start with the root element, which is the page element, and the page element is where you define your controller. So you either define a standard controller with the standard controller attribute, or you define a custom controller with the controller attribute, and then you can use an extension using the extensions attribute. That's a comma-separated list of Apex classes that you're going to be using. You can define custom actions. So two ways to define custom actions that we're going to talk about is command button and command link. There are a couple others that I urge you to look at. Action function is one. We're not touching that in this demo. And also Visualforce remoting is another way to interact with your controller from the client. So the command button and command link are bound to controller operations, or controller methods to perform the action. One really, really cool feature of Visualforce that I love is the way it can re-render or do partial page updates. So it gives you more of a modern UI. Instead of refreshing an entire page on a button click, you can just refresh a certain part of the page. You do that with the re-render attribute on, like, your, for example, command button or command link. We'll see that in the demo. And then also, it's really easy to provide a status area. So while an operation is executing, you can have some text come up and say working. I always think of Gmail when the thing lowers down and says that it's busy doing something as you're clicking around. So you can do areas for providing status updates. And then all Visualforce elements that render any content, it doesn't have to be visible. It's any content that's in the DOM, you can show or hide it using the rendered attribute. And that's something we'll be using too. So iterations can be handled with the repeat element. We're going to be using that in our demo today. There's a couple others, page block table, data table, to name a couple more. We're not going to use those today. Input and output is handled with the input field and input text elements, and the output is output field and output text. Cool thing about these elements is that they work on the data type. So if you have a pick list data type in your object and you render an input field, you're going to get a pick list widget. And for output, if you have a date field, for example, and you use output field, you're going to get the date formatting of your locale, and that all comes for free. Very powerful part of Visualforce is something called the Visualforce component. It's similar to Rails partials, if anyone's familiar with Rails. It's a way to write some markup that you want to reuse in multiple pages. So it's a write once, use multiple places. So you can just change the code in one place and it will update everywhere you include it. We'll see that in our demo too. And finally, sometimes you don't want to render, or sometimes you do just want to render something static. It's not going to be dynamically rendered from a controller or from your page. You just want to pull in a CSS file or a JS file, and you can use static resources for that and upload those files and then reference them in your pages using the $resource special variable. A note on styling. So Salesforce or Visualforce uses standard styles, or you can choose to use your own custom styles. However you write your page, those styles are going to be the same between the classic experience and Lightning experience. So you don't get any special treatment if you move a Visualforce page from classic into Lightning. No special styling treatment. So what we do, we recommend that if you're going to write a new Visualforce page, you consider using something called SLDS, or the Salesforce Lightning Design System. And we have a link to a Trailhead module here. And also, if you're interested in this, you should go check out our coworkers' presentation this Friday in the Hilton, where they are going to be doing exactly that, designing a Visualforce page with Lightning for Lightning experience. It's a really cool session. It's over at the Hilton in the Grand Ballroom B. All right, so let's jump into the demo. So here are the entities that we've created for our it's a shopping cart. Obviously, we're demoing a shopping cart that we created with Visualforce. So we've got three objects: the order, the line item, and the item. These are custom objects, and we'll hop into our schema builder. So this is a schema builder which comes with any developer org, and you can choose to look at your objects in sort of this graphical way, which is kind of nice. So basically, you can see we've got an order and item. So item is all the items in our store. The order is going to capture personal information about the order that someone's making. And we have a junction object called line item because we want to create a many-to-many relationship between order and item, because an order can have many items and an item can be on many orders. So we have this junction line item that helps us achieve that. And we've got three pages. We've got the store page. This is our storefront. It's the most complex page. We'll be looking at probably the most part of this demo. We've got a checkout page that captures some personal information, name and email. And we've got an order summary page that prints a thank you message. And we've got our cart, which is a component. So the cart's going to be rendered on every page. So we decided to make a custom component for that. We're using the order standard controller. So order is our object. And the reason we use order is because we get a handle to the order that we're working with throughout the page flow. And then we're using an extension called store extension. Okay, now if we jump right into our demo, go to our storefront. And here's our storefront. Does it look awesome? No. No. Would you want to shop here? No, neither would we. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our developer console, and we're going to change. So we've got a static resource here, two static resources. One's called simple styles and one's called simple scripts, and we've included them with a style sheet and include script elements. We're going to switch these to fancy styles and fancy scripts. No magic here. It's just simple styling changes and some scripts to help us do some interesting client-based things. And we'll save that. The code hasn't changed at all. The markup hasn't changed. And we hope that it saves. It's still saving. Well, let's go back to the store front. At some point, this is going to save. So I guess we'll talk about it the way it is now, even though it looks this way. So we've got our items. We've got add to cart buttons on the items. We've got a show cart link at the top, and Michelle will run through what it would look like to shop at the store. So if you add something to the cart, notice a couple things. Well, it doesn't look so good without the new styling, but there's a little working ... that pops up under the cart. And notice that the shopping cart is changing as you click the add to cart, and the total is changing as well. All right, now you can proceed to checkout. And it captures the name and email. Obviously, it's not going to capture any payment information. We're not a real store. It shows the cart. Notice it's showing the cart on this page as well. And then we can complete the order. Well, we can continue shopping, and the cart remains intact. We can complete the order. And we get this order summary page, which just says thanks for the order. Again, it shows the shopping cart, and we get the total printed as a currency. So this is just a decimal field, but because it's currency type, then we get the $sign, and the order time is an output field on date, and that's why we get this formatting for our locale. Can we go back to the store and see if it still isn't updated, huh? Not saving. Okay, well, that's okay. Let's look at the page, the store page. So we've got two panels. So, sorry, let's start at the top. So we've got a page element. Like I said, the page element has to be the first element in the page. And we've got a standard controller. It's specified as order. So it says order _ C because order is a custom object. Anything you create in Salesforce that's custom has this _ C, whether it's a field or an object. So we reference it that way, and we specify our extension with store extension. We've already seen the static resources. So if we look down, we've got a form. We've got two divs. Now these divs, if they were styled correctly, use the Flexbox display, and they would render a lot nicer on that page with the cart on the left and the panels on the right, but we haven't seen that yet. Oh, it saved, I think. Oh, yeah, wow. Oh, that was so dramatic. So we've got some tiling. Like I said, we've got the cart on the left. It just looks nicer this way. We've got some rollovers, and the buttons pop up as you roll over them. Okay, great. So now let's go back to the cart page. Okay, so now let's look at the cart output panel. So an output panel is basically a div, but it's special. It's rendered by the Visualforce engine. So we have an ID that we've attached to it, and that'll come in hand. We'll explain that a little bit in a second. So we've got our cart in here. So notice it's C:cart. I said that everything built in is in the Apex namespace. Well, this is our custom cart, so it's not in the Apex namespace. It's in our custom namespace, which happens to be C, just like order _ C. So we're asking it to render our cart. We're passing a rendered attribute to it, and it's bound to, whenever you see curly braces and a bang, we're binding that to something in the controller. We're binding this to a Boolean in the controller called show cart. So it will render it if that's true and not if it's false. And then we're passing the order, which is the order that we have a handle to. We're passing that into the cart so we can iterate the child line item. So if we look at the cart component, very simple cart. We've got some empty cart handling. If the line item size is 0, meaning there's nothing in there, we print a friendly message saying it's empty. Notice that line items _ R is what we use to reference the related objects. So _ R just means a reference to the line items that are attached to this. And then notice we're using our first repeat here. So Apex repeat, and we're iterating the line items. And basically, if there's something in there, we're going to print one line per line item with the quantity and the name. All right, back at the store. Now, just above that panel, we've got a toggle panel. So the toggle panel is what's printing out our hide or show cart link. So the value of the command link is bound to another controller property. So we want to say hide cart if it's showing, and we want to say show cart if it's hidden. So that's why that changes. And then the action is toggle show cart. And notice we're using this re-render attribute. I keep pointing up. We're using this re-render attribute. So this is basically saying that when this command button is clicked, we don't want to do a full page update. We just want to re-render toggle and cart, which are these two panels. So we want to re-render the cart because it's going to change. And we want to re-render toggle because the name of the link is going to change. So if we go to the controller extension now, we're going to look at some Apex code. And if we look at get toggle link. So get toggle link is very simple. It just returns hide card if it's showing and show card if it's not. And then toggle show card is our action handler. It just reverses what show card was. All right, if we go back to the storefront. All right, so like I said, we've got these items in here in a tile. So we're going to go look now how we get the items rendered onto the page. So if we go back to the page and we go down to the items panel, notice we've got another repeat here. So we're repeating and we're iterating over something called items that's bound to a controller property called items. So if we go to the controller and we look at what items is, we'll see how we get data into this. So here's our items property. So items, you can see, is populated with what looks like SQL, but it's not SQL, is SOQL, or Salesforce Object Query Language. We're selecting 3 columns from the item custom object, and we're just setting a where clause that has to be active. So in SOQL, you can't do select star. It's a little different than other web development languages. You have to specifically state which columns you're going to be, or fields you're going to be using on your page. So in this case, we'll only need these 3. You have to make sure you select all the ones you need, otherwise you'll get a little message saying you didn't select, you're trying to use this field and you haven't selected it. So this is how we populate our items using the SOQL query. So if we go back to the cart page, that's how the operation works. Let's look at the Visualforce page. No, sorry, the page. Sorry, I'm sorry, the store page. My bad. All right. So down below, if we look at this output panel, we've got an add to cart span here. And we've got another command button, and the action is add to cart. The value just add to cart. It's not going to change. And again, we're re-rendering things. We're re-rendering the cart and the total areas, because when you add something to the cart, you're going to re-render it. Notice we have something called status over here, and that is set to something called cart status. We're going to look at that in just a minute. That's how we're printing that working ... message. And we're passing one parameter to the command because we need to know which item we're going to add to the cart. So that's what this param is here. So let's look up under cart status div, just up there, line 15. So we've got, expand, sorry, is it 18? There you go. Okay, so we've got an action status. So this is what's printing the working message. So when you notice it says start text. So when the operation starts, we print working ... And when it's done, we just clear it out. So that's how we get that little pop-up when you click on the buttons. It's really simple to do things like that. Okay, so let's go back to the storefront, and let's proceed to checkout. So we're going to quickly look at the page to see how we navigate to this page. So we've got a on the store page. Let's look at there's a proceed to checkout. So we've got a command button up there on line 15 that the action is go to checkout. So if we go look at the controller really quick, we've got 3 methods that do just navigation for us. And we're just going to look at them all at the same time. So we've got go to checkout, which just returns a reference to the checkout page, so page.checkout. We got complete order, which returns the order summary page. And we've got get store page, which just returns the store page. So we won't have to talk about those. We can just see the buttons and not revisit them. Okay, so let's go back to the storefront. Right, so we're collecting personal information. Let's go to the checkout page. It's a very simple page. Checkout page is just capturing information. The most notable thing here is we've got 2 input fields. One is the name. Notice that that's __C as well, an email. And then we have a navigation area where we can complete the order or continue shopping. Notice that we got the cart there, so C:*cart on line 6. Super simple, just to reprint that cart without writing any more code. And one more thing I want to mention. Notice that this page has obviously a page element at the top, but we're using the same standard controller order, and we're using the same extension. All right, so let's go back to the store. And if we complete the order, notice this is an email field. If you don't provide a well-formatted email, you get this validation that's just handled for you because the type of the field is an email field. Okay, so let's look at the order summary page. The order summary page is almost identical to the checkout page. The only thing different is it's not collecting information, it's printing a thank you message. It reprints the cart for you, and then it does the total field and the time field, so you get those output fields for total and last modified time, which gives us the date. And then we have a simple output link to get us back to the store. So that's the demo. I feel that we covered a ton. I wanted to summarize what we looked at. So Visualforce is a markup language. It's the V in MVC. Visualforce provides powerful tags to render HTML. We saw output panel. We saw the input and output fields. We saw command buttons and command links and repeat elements. Visualforce components can be reused. We saw our cart was reused on all 3 pages. Visualforce can do AJAX requests under the cover to do partial page updates for you. We did that with the re-render element or re-render attribute. Standard controllers provide basic operations, and that's what the standard controller we used for order. Visualforce can be bound to Apex entities like actions and properties. And finally, Apex provides for customized controller logic. It's the C in MVC, and that's an example of that was our add to cart method. We got some links here. A link to the Visualforce developer guides, a must read, definitely must reference. If you want to sign up at DevOrg today and start writing code today, you can do that for free. There's a link to the Apex developer guide. You're going to want to read about Apex if you're going to write anything dynamic. We've got 2 Trailhead modules, the Visualforce fundamentals, and that same module we talked about earlier about Visualforce and Lightning Experience. And there is an active Stack Exchange for Visualforce, and there's a link to that as well, where lots of people ask and answer questions. And that's it. If we have any more time, we have some time. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
I'm doing a Visualforce page with a JavaScript reference. Where do you upload those resource files?
JavaScript files? So those are also static resources.
And where do you upload them?
So if you can do it in the developer console. Can you go to the developer console? So if you want to create a new static resource, like a JavaScript file, you can just say File New in developer console. And then just do, I think you just do new static resource. You give it a name. So and you reference it by a name, right? So it may have a name, .js, but you give it another name here, and that's how the $resource variable works. And then you just copy the code in. The other way to do it is in setup, you just go to static resource under the develop menu, and you can upload your file directly. You also have to give it a name there. It'll be different than the actual file name. All right, thank you.